As I have said before, my father was a scholar at heart. He was taken with locking himself away with his books and a chalkboard in the family library. As I grew, he took it upon himself to teach me what he could. However, I never had any formal lessons because he was often so scatterbrained in his research projects that he would shut himself in his study and turn us away, having completely forgotten that he was the one who invited us to join him an hour earlier. Eventually, my siblings and I would catch him, and we would dive into the lessons as best we could. He was a soft-spoken man, but he was truly brilliant. On rare occasions, noble scholars from far away would stop by and converse with my father. I'm not entirely sure what his specialty was, but based on his contraptions, I think it had something to do with engineering. I will never forget the phrase he often repeated during our studies. He said, "In all things there is balance, if you look closely enough. Cause and effect, push and pull, action and reaction." He said that there was no better laboratory than nature, for all things follow the fundamental laws that run all of creation. I wish I could share with him what I know now. After all these years, I finally see what he was trying to teach me. The miraculous things I have witnessed on other worlds are bound by natural rules and laws, and there is an accounting for all the incredible abilities that people can wield. Investiture is just one word to describe the fundamental power by which men bend the forces of the Cosmere with intent to their will. Words like sand shaping, burning metals, drawing aeons, and surge binding are all in effect the manipulation of investiture. When something or someone is considered invested, they hold a portion of divine power or potential. Stormlight is possibly the best example because the body literally thrums with the unbridled power that is then translated into a focus by the user via a bond to a spren. When I say focus, I mean the nature and shape that the power takes. On Cell, the Elantrians use complex shapes and markings of Aeon Door to dictate the shape and power of the investiture. While this is a complex system to master, it holds the most fluidity. In application, it is near limitless in what it can do with the right knowledge. However, their power is, for the most part, limited to the geographical location of Cell, even to specific continents. I would call this an open concept manifestation, because it has no real set shape or application, although the time and learning necessary to access the power of the door is a distinct downside to such an adaptable system. On the other hand, the best example of a closed concept manifestation of investiture can be found in allomancy. By its nature, allomancy is limited by very harsh rules. The metals that can be burned to access investiture need to be burned and properly mixed as alloys in order to work. In fact, an allomancer who burns metals that are impure or improperly crafted can get sick and die from the mistake. The benefit is that the powers granted by allomancy are dependable and simple. However, there is little to nothing more to be learned. All allomancers are limited by the power of the metals, no matter the skill or experience of the user. This means quick and adaptable powers, but severe limitations in shaping the investiture that gives them power. The application of each type of investiture can range to fit a variety of settings, but each one must take a unique course to the eventual goal. The paths to investiture vary in form and execution, just as how languages differ between different nations. All language seeks to bring together an understanding, but the execution can be very different between peoples and are not usually compatible with each other. I would assume that investiture would be the same, although I am not sure that there are limitations to using said powers. I know, for instance, that the proper metals and alloy mixes are useful to allomancy no matter where they physically are. I've seen that Elantrians can employ investiture outside of Cell, although I am unsure how they overcome the natural geographic limits to their powers. In fact, I believe that travel in the Cosmere would be impossible if the beings who traverse it ultimately did not have access to the powers of their homelands. It is clear to me that the power of the spiritual realm is accessible in all places in the Cosmere. Unlike the physical and cognitive realms, it seems there is no apparent change in the ability to access the spiritual realm, no matter the location of the individual. So the limitation is the ability to access the power, not the availability of the power. Each world is governed by different sets of natural laws that determine who can access the power and how the investiture can be used. On Nalthis, each person is born with an endowment of investiture called breath. It is a small connection to the Cosmere itself and on its own has little effect, but it can be given to others, and with enough breath one can command once living objects into servitude. Words and symbols hold the key on Cell, where Elantrians draw patterns in the air to give shape to the door, and Dokor etch their will onto their bones. There are worshippers of other arts with ink and blood that shape the fabric of reality itself, but I have not seen this personally. But what all these forms share is a dependence of the physical drawing that shapes the investiture into what they need. There is a world called Taldane that I only just heard about. I hope to visit it soon, but there is very little known about it yet. However, there are hints of shapers of the sand, who manipulate and mold the sand found on that world. I imagine it would be a beautiful art to observe. There may be other forms of investitures accessed there, but I am not sure what they would be, and I hope to learn someday. On Scadrial, the people use the metallic arts. The use of metal manifests as physical, mental, enhancement, and temporal powers through the 3 known forms. Allomancers draw investiture directly from the source and use it as a power in a limited fashion. Ferrochemists store their natural abilities by saving them up in metals, using them like gemstones on Roshar to store the abilities for later use, and can access them at an accelerated rate. Then there is Hemalurgy, the darkest of the arts that I know, which destroys life to steal power from the sacrifice, to then spike it into another's soul. On Roshar, as I said, the Spren form a bridge between the investiture of the Stormlight for use by the Radiant whom they are bonded to. The Parshendi also seem to be bonded to Spren, but it is not the same as a nail bond, and I don't know by what method they do this. The unknown bond is actually a focus of my current study, for I feel that this is critical to understanding the struggles we are facing in this war. It might even be the key to our salvation. I am positive that there are worlds I have not yet heard of. If there is one thing that I hope for, it is that I can continue to learn more about the incredible abilities and peoples of the Cosmere. Despite the danger I am currently in, I am living life again. I never thought that the struggles and dangers here would awaken my soul, but it did. Until the next letter, Elsric. How's it going? Thank you so much for joining me for the newest Letters from the Cosmere. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you're excited for the next one. But first off, a big shout out once again to all the fantastic artists who have been submitting their works and allowing this project to be so just beautiful. Please make sure to check out their links in the description below. They're the first ones there. I want you to be able to see everybody's artwork and where it came from. And more importantly, where you can go to give them a little love. Let them know how much you appreciate them sharing their work with us. I mean, honestly, it's fantastic. I also wanted to tell you the topic of the next episode is Hoid. Now that's going to be a very fun one. I may have to take a little extra time doing it, but that's just because I want to make sure I do it right. I know there's going to be a lot of interesting opinions and a lot of controversy about him, and we're probably going to have to do multiple episodes of him as we learn more in the future, but for now, I'm excited to do it. If you have any artwork or anything you'd like to submit for this series that involves Hoid, I would love to have it. I honestly have to say I have almost no pictures to access that are of him, and I mean, I'll obviously be portraying art as I do it, but it'd be really nice to have something that was really featuring Hoid himself. So please contact me through my business email, which will appear here, and also is linked in the description below once again. Please, 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 if you can, do so. I'm really excited to be able to support artists and be able to help them express themselves online in just a new format to help people who are interested in their artwork to be able to find it. So thank you so much, and thanks for watching this episode, and I'll see you in the next one.